No, we're talking about Kate Bush, The Hounds of Love.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, post Stranger Things, this album is even bigger than ever.
It is.
But there is a sense that this is the ultimate art pop record, isn't it? It's not prog, it's not electronic, it's not pop, it's all of the above, and it's something more too.
Yeah.
And I think many people would say that this is the zenith of her catalogue. It's actually not my favourite, and I'm just going to second guess that it's probably not your favourite either.
I'm sort of with you on this. I think it might be her best, but it's not my favourite.
The Dreaming is my favourite. This is her best. I think I can say that. It is her best because it's like everything comes together. The pop sensibility, great pop songs that were massive hits, obviously. The whole of side one is pretty much chock-a-block with songs that were big hits. And yet the second side has got the long conceptual conceit, the suite, which has some of her most ambitious and experimental music on it. It's the quintessential perfect Kate Bush record. And obviously also the fact that it was made in 1985. She is someone that embraces technology and uses it in the best possible way. It's a masterpiece. It's unequivocally a masterpiece. What would you say about this record, Tim?
I'd agree. I think it is her best album. And this is the most streamlined, perfect Kate Bush album.
It's interesting you mentioned the word streamlined, because sorry to butt in. One thing I was going to say about this, it's quite economical, this album, isn't it? There's not a lot going on. And a track like Running Up the Hill, there's very little on it. There's that rhythm track, that, really extraordinary and immediately captivating rhythm track. The main Fairlight melody, and the rest is her voice.
Well, in a way, it's a bit like Prince's Kiss that's going to come a year afterwards, which is one of the most economical mainstream productions. Yeah, everything is very, very carefully considered, and every sound is really quite interesting, quite personalised. She knows how to use this equipment, and she's got a vision for it all. And again, it's one of those albums that sometimes, when you're envious, because you listen to an album and you think, this is a work of art. It's uncompromising, it's visionary, and yet it manages to communicate to the masses. Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon is another example of that. Talk's Colour of Spring in a different way is an example of that. When an album isn't remotely compromised and yet manages to kind of hit the public in a major, major way, and continues to do so. As we said with Stranger Things, rediscovering Running Up That Hill. And I remember with Running Up That Hill, because again, it must have come out around the time of Band Aid, and the first time I heard it was on Wogan. She was on the Wogan show playing Running Up That Hill, and I remember being absolutely fascinated by it. Sat in Your Lap was another single where I remember being totally captivated, and I was recalling the melody because the single hadn't been released, and I was almost replaying this song in my head, Running Up That Hill. And it was when I'd in fact gone to Felixstowe for these sessions with Robert Cox, and that track was just pummeling through my brain. And that's an example of something that gripped me from the first moment I heard it.
It's funny, you mentioned Prince, and Kiss was coming the following year, but there is a sense that Prince had already been there and done that with When Doves Cry, which is another track which is so economical. Famously, it has no bass on it. Prince recorded a bass, and when he was mixing it, he sort of just pulled the bass fader. Such a counterintuitive thing to do on a pop single, and yet it makes the track in a way. And there is something, I think, about that mentality is prevalent right through this record too, in an era when excess was the byword. Let's be excessive, let's throw the kitchen sink at this. And she, there is a part of the album, it's an album of contradictions, isn't it? Because she does do that too, in a way. In fact, the second side, she has a choir, she has a Irish, what do you call, river dancey type, I don't know how to describe it, that
Michael Flatley comes along.
Yes, and Michael Flat. She has that kind of Gaelic band, she has the choir, she has the sound design, she has this massive conceit of the sidelong, epic. Not all of which, and for me, actually, parts of that are slightly what let the album down. I don't need to hear Jig of Life and Watching Me Without You again, particularly. They're my least favourite Kate Bush tracks on this album anyway. But the fact they're part of this long conceptual suite, just the fact somebody would do that in 1985. And it's interesting, you're mentioning this idea about hearing something on the radio and having almost to capture it in your mind, because it's not like you can just replay it off YouTube, or stream it again off your phone. You have to wait for the single to be released. And I remember this happening time and time again to me in the 80s. Hearing Kiss on the radio, hearing Sign of the Times, the first single from that album. just like, oh my God, he's done it again. He's reinvented himself again. And not being able to wait to be able to tape it off the chart rundown or to be able to go and buy the 7-inch single or the album, you know. And, you know, without wishing to sound like 1,000 years old, I think that's something that obviously kids don't have that anymore, do they?
No.
I think she's someone that there was always a very strong relationship between the lyrics and the subject matter and the music. That was very important to her. So Running Up That Hill has that kind of lolloping, almost like jogging.
Yeah.
It has that kind of energy to the rhythm, which fits perfectly with the sentiment of the lyrics, and I think she always was that was always very important to her.
Yeah.
But it's obviously a very important record to her too, because when she played live back 10 years ago now or whatever it was, when she did those shows in London, basically most of the set was drawn from Hounds of Love and Ariel. You know, 80% of the set, which I remember being slightly disappointed with at the time, because I would love to have heard something off The Dreaming. I would love to have heard something off Lionheart or Never Forever. But no, it was, and she obviously thinks of that record as a creative high point, and rightfully so.
It's creative and commercial high point. It's that point where everything merges.
Everything comes together, And we've talked about that with certain artists before, haven't we? That they're on the way from one thing to another, and they just catch that perfect moment with an album where everything is in balance. Everything falls into place. The quirkiness, the pop sensibility, the fascination with technology, and the time as well. Obviously, you know, there's something that's kind of out of the control of the artist, which is the sign of the times, you know, to refer to Prince. And the album just came at exactly the right time. It came in the year of Live Aid. It came in the year of Live Aid, and it was almost the antidote to Live Aid in a way. In that Live Aid seemed very worthy and not about the music. And then Kate comes out with this record that seemed like it was only about the art. It was only about the creativity. And yet, as you say, it also had massive hits on it, almost despite itself.
Indeed.